Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone here at the Auxerre at the faculty, and very much hello to those watching from home. It's a pleasure to welcome you all, the audience at home, and our participants tonight to the first BK Talks of the academic year 23-24. It's somehow incredible that this is already our fourth year of BK Talks. I'm somehow very happy that the title of our BK Talks is Diversity You Tell Us. I'm very happy that I think for the second time we start the academic year with a BK Talks on the topic. So, and I'm very happy that the topic keeps being spoken about, and we will have the chance tonight to keep talking about it. I'm saying talking and talking because this is the BK Talks, okay? So, I'm very happy that the conversation goes on, and I really mean it. So tonight we just finished the exhibition that is going to be dismantled tomorrow, and we are sort of celebrating the end of that exhibition on diversity and inclusion, not only at the faculty but maybe also outside. Before we go into the subject matter, I would like to introduce you to what we have prepared for this academic year. I don't want to bore you with everything that we are going to do this semester, but I would like to highlight two events. One is this exhibition on photography, which is called Sites and Situations. And we would like you all to please participate and send us your work of how photography helps you design in a nutshell. So you have still until, if I may read properly, September 8th, maybe a bit longer, to send us your work. Send us how does photography help you design and take design decisions. And then second, and I know this is a lot more popular, Ai Weiwei will be with us in person, no Zoom, no hologram, nothing, no actor, no replica. It's Ai Weiwei in person is coming to the faculty on the 28th of September within the framework of the BK Talks organized with Extreme Architecture. I would like to point out that this is not going to be a lecture delivered by Ai Weiwei, so that you are there on the other side and he's telling what he does. What we would like to organize is a conversation. So everybody at the faculty, be students, are invited to send us your questions. The questions will be part of an installation here in the Auxerre, and you will have the chance to talk to Ai Weiwei by means of that question that you have posed. So please also send us your questions for Ai Weiwei before the 8th of September. Again, this deadline can be extended. Let me go back to where we are, or the reason why we are here today. Diversity, you tell us. I will go very quickly because I want to give the word to the ones that are here tonight with us. So I just want to tell you this little story about You Tell Us, and this is some kind of journey that started several years ago with the BK Talks. The first BK Talks that we celebrated had to do with diversity and inclusion. I was contacted by some members of the Estilos Association back then who wanted to talk about what was going on in the United States, Black Lives Matter. And I decided that when I was organizing this program that had to be the first BK Talks. Then we have celebrated others and perspectives, and this is actually the fourth one. And I'm very happy that the conversation goes on. I think this is not at all an closed conversation. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this must go on. No? One of the things that I want to highlight is this work done by your colleagues, students, a couple of years ago, no? With two women from this faculty who decided to check how diversity was actually being part of the education, etc. And then they made this amazing video that we have just published, no? And the results were really somehow obvious, but at the same time a little bit make you feel ashamed of where we are, etc. But anyway, I just pointed out one question here. Have you been taught by an Asian tutor professor in the last 5 years? Well, not bad. Have you been taught by a black tutor professor in the last 5 years? Things you know, the results are there. So it was, I'm not gonna go there into so much detail, but it was a really interesting exercise done by these students who were wondering and questioning diversity and inclusion, no? So finally, we decided this spring that we wanted to have an exhibition, not only a BK Talks on diversity and inclusion, and we decided to organize this show that is still at the Auxerre. We asked students to let us know what it is that they had to say, what were their concerns about diversity, and we asked them, we made an open call to send us letters on diversity. And it was a bit of a frustrating result. 2 people sent us a letter. So I really thank very, very much to those 2 people, to those people who sent us those 2 letters. And yeah, but probably 2 letters is not enough, and this is why we decided to be more proactive within the team, a team to which I am very, very grateful. So the team is now being renewed, but the former team undertook a series of interviews with some of you sitting here tonight. So of course we contacted Robert, who is going to be moderating the BK Talks today, together with Cecil. We contacted Seyran Karem, Ifra Arif, Jagis. Sorry for the spelling. My name is Javier. You don't know what names I've heard of me, so please bear with that. Bear with me. Irene, that I can pronounce really well. So I think no mistakes there. Cecile, she will also be co-moderating the show. Birgit, Eva, Roberto is also here, and Amy is not here, but she was here a few minutes ago. She couldn't join. This is the exhibition, some images of the exhibition that is next to you right there. Today is the last day, as I mentioned, and we made the effort to try to, how do you show all these words, no? Show all these thoughts, etc., by means of first this video installation that shows the interviews, as well as the text that is surrounding them. As an exhibition designer, I love text. I know that many people hate to read, but I think it's possible to combine those things. But I'm not going to give you a lecture on curating or exhibition design. This is not the purpose of tonight's show. What I'm going to do now is to give the word to Robert and Cecile, who will drive us through this session tonight. The point is that we try to keep the conversation going. I really would like that the students integrate diversity and inclusion in what they do, but not only in design, to be frank. I think that we will have to be a little bit more political outside the walls of academia, and I hope that these conversations kind of resonate in our daily lives, not only in design. So Robert and Cecile, diversity officer, community officer, please go ahead. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
We switch. Thank you very much, Javier, for your introduction. Thank you, panel, for being here. And thank you for BK Expo for the beautiful exposition and the really fast process of interviewing and gathering all these texts and quotes. Yeah, so I'll first introduce ourselves. Robert Bob is the new diversity officer of the faculty, and together with him, I was coming in on the scene. I'm the community officer. Bob is more on the policy part of the diversity, and I'm here more for the events. I want to create atmospheres and spheres, events in which people can meet each other, have a dialogue, and also maybe sort of hard conversations about diversity, and not only for people within the diversity bubble, if it's existing, but for everybody. So one of the events I want to advertise a little bit is going to happen next week. It's a cooperation with B News, B Kino. It's the faculty newspaper. It's very beautiful theme, and the theme will be the good, the bad, and the in between. And hopefully there will be a couple of movies in separate, also here in the Orange Hall. There will be drinks, popcorn, snacks, and hopefully will be also nice conversations. It's for staff and for students, and everybody is welcome. So please feel free to come in. That is a small commercial block. Now we start with a panel, which is the most important, of course. First start with Birgit. Maybe you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Oh, well, actually not, but you're asking me. No, hello. My name is Birgitte. I'm a Danish architect. I have my own office in Rotterdam. I'm an independent researcher. I curate and design exhibitions. I write and speak and teach here in Delft. And I teach architecture history, architectural analysis, and architectural research here, primarily in the architecture department.
Thank you. Welcome. Then we go to Irene.
Can you hear me? Yes, right. I also introduce myself, right? So I'm freshly graduated, actually former BK student. I did my master's here. And I would say now I'm an architect and researcher, more engaged in teaching, exactly in these topics of intersectional feminism, queering studies and so on, and how to basically bring this into the architectural academia, which is my main interest. And yeah, that is what I'm pursuing now.
Thank you. Well, it's not in order, so now we switch to Roberto.
Hi everyone, my name is Roberto Rocco. I'm an associate professor of spatial planning and strategy here, and I focus my research on the governance of just sustainability transitions. So how do we go from non-sustainability to sustainability in cities? And when you're talking about just sustainability, you have to talk about justice, and a big part of justice is diversity.
Clear. Do you want to click now, or I'll click? Yes.
Hello, I'm Yes. I'm an architect, researcher, and lecturer here at the Department of Architecture at TU Delft, and my research interests are including education, buildings, architecture of education, and informal learning spaces.
Thank you. Eva.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eva. I studied here. I studied landscape architecture, and after graduating, I started my own Studio Ventura, in which I design residential buildings, but I also do research and research by design. For the 3 S's is what I call it: spatial, social, safety. So figuring out how spaces literally contribute to feeling safe and being safe. And that came from the fact that I also organize queer parties. They're called FOOF.
Thank you.
Maybe I want to say something a little bit about what's happening right now. So what we decided is, so first of all, I want to thank Javier actually for organizing the amazing exhibition and the interviews and so on. And what we did for today is, in some sense, we invited the people whose voices were represented in some sense, and now we give you the faces, and we use this as an opportunity to discuss some of the statements that have been put forward. And so what we want to do now is, in some sense, we highlighted some of those statements that you may have read and may have also wondered about. And rather than putting people on the spot and asking, you said that, what do you mean? I actually think it's nicer if we discuss together how do you interpret that? Is there something missing, and so on. So we have a selection of quotes, starting with, like, I'm not even sure if we should name who said that or not, but it's not about to put the people on the spot. No. Okay, so of course we want to talk about diversity, you tell us, and then I think the clearest definition of diversity we had is that diversity is about understanding that personal stories are influenced by various intersecting factors such as gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, and social class. So, and I think it would be very nice to hear your thoughts on in how far you agree with this or so. Now we do have to put somebody on the spot.
I can start. Maybe I shouldn't, because I actually did say this. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think this, or at least this intersectional lens, is important to bring into the discussion, because I feel like a lot of times if we speak about feminism, queering, or let's say racial discrimination, we think it doesn't have to do with us if we don't suffer that. So actually to bring this intersectionality and discuss it in this way, I think it helps to, let's say, not put everyone on the spot, but let's say make everyone engage in the conversation. And I also think that if we speak about the differentiation between, for example, equality and equity, that we have to offer equal chances for everyone, but then we don't acknowledge the intersectionality of the struggles that individuals suffer, then we cannot actually address it. So,
and you teach in Rotterdam as well, in the academy?
Yeah, now I will be teaching this in Leuven in Belgium. So I'm trying to also bring this knowledge from theory to...
Yeah, exactly. Do you have how do you want to do it? Or what's the approach?
I think it's something that you don't have to theoretically give a definition or let's say a lot of clues, but it's something that us as citizens in international environments such as these universities are, we can quite easily grasp that, also if we work in a context. So I think it's more about carefully looking at the context and communicating with the people rather than, so I think my idea is to give the students the tools to also realize it.
Yes, we talked about it before this session a little bit, Roberto, because you also said we should be more aware of that, maybe, that all these cultures are here. Could you elaborate on it?
Well, I think we all have multiple identities. We are not only one thing. We have multiple identities even during the course of one day. We are parts of a family, we are teachers, we are students, learners and teachers. It helps to name the struggle. So we have feminism, we have LGBTQ empowerment, we have all these things, but it also helps to think everybody's struggling and I need to empathize and help my fellow strugglers, my fellow human beings who are also struggling. How are we going to live together? That's the big question for me, of related to your quote of intersectionality.
Yeah, thanks. And do you have some? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm more of the concrete. How do you envision it? Should we ask at any session, well, what's your struggle, or well, how do you, or is it a general awareness? You should be, I don't know.
I think we definitely need to educate the educators. I don't think it's so much about the students who live this diversity every day. I think a lot of us, teachers, researchers, need to be educated on this, on these struggles, and on being in somebody else's shoes. I don't know how you teach that, but I think it's a general awareness that we need to create. And it starts with creating the awareness that the designer is not the center of the universe. There are people for whom you design, and those are the people who are important.
Yeah, thanks. Is there anybody, Birgit, you're also from a different, you had your education in Denmark. Is a different approach, or is there more openness towards struggles, or?
Yeah, I think this is a really deep subject in a way, and I'm kind of thinking because of the slides we saw in the beginning of did you have a teacher from Asia, or did you have it, I don't know what's, and I'm kind of thinking if we should contextualize this quote in the light of education and also who the educators are. I think it's a really interesting thing to think about. How could we diversify the student population? You know, how could we get, I mean, should we try? You know, I think we should try. I live in Rotterdam West. But how do we do this? You know, how do we diversify the population? How do we give voice to, or invite all these people in? You know, I gave a workshop at the school of my son when he was like 8 years old or something in Rotterdam West. And to try and talk about architecture and interior design with children, you know, of mixed backgrounds and stuff. And I think it's not only about what I think, you know, or what we as a group think, or what we as a university think, you know, but about you know, inviting different perceptions in, I think, and giving a broader group of people the feel that architecture is open as a discipline that you can work in, despite your gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, and social class. And I'm not sure that there is the awareness right now. That was my experience being with these children. That they were not taught, you know, that they could be creative or artists or architects, or that they could decide, you know, that they could have influence on their environment, that they could be part of defining what an urban scheme could look like. And I think that's some of my deeper concerns, you know, not so much about me, you know, but about how we could come together and create these other opportunities. So I'm looking at you in a way, and I'm kind of thinking, where do you come from? And, you know, how do you look at this? And what is the potential of that quote that way?
I also think a big thing is the attitude of our role models as architects. Like you said before, are we all knowing? Are we showing truth in aesthetic quality, in living quality, or are we translators of users' desires? And I think that is a very important shift in finding a route to inclusive design. So it starts with the teachers and the way we present ourselves, the way we build an image of being an architect. Is it some kind of elitist, autonomous art, or is it a humble and sensitive field of work where we listen to the needs of people that want to live together?
Yes, you want to?
Yeah, I think in this quote, for me, the key word is the understanding, and I think it's also an optimistic one, let's say, because it already says that we can understand all struggles, right? And I don't necessarily believe that we can understand everyone's struggles. And it may be beyond the limits of the logic in a way, you know, like, we need to also say that, okay, I don't understand you, but I don't need to understand you. And I trust you that you have some troubles or struggles, and it's fine. I'm not trying to make a sense out of it by myself. It's just, yeah, that you can be a part of this. And yeah, that's, to me, is the beginning of understanding all these parts.
What I'm thinking is, in some sense, like that the intersectional aspect in there is, of course, extremely important to understand that these things are not separated, or that they're not separated among different groups of people. And I think the intersectional aspect also makes it actually more easy to start somewhere, no? Looking around, we acknowledge that we are far from where some people pretend we are. No, we are in the process of actually enriching our education, our educators, our students, and so on. And of course, there's a huge discrepancy between, as you say, a certain demographic of Rotterdam, the demographic of our students here that have already been filtered out from not being able to access that sort of education, and then the teachers that educate them that come from another generation where that diversity was even less. So I think that in itself is already an intersectional question. How do we deal with this? And I think that relates to the second quote that we have, namely that institution or change within institutions like Delft is slow. It's like trying to turn around a supertanker. And of course, it's not meant to be an excuse, but it's about that is part of the problem. No? So I would like to hear your thoughts maybe on the slownesses, and maybe how do we get some traction and speed in certain areas? What do you think?
I think in this, I really like this quote. I think here I would go also for Roberto's strategy of naming, because I think change is slow, but also because there is not really a space. I mean, now we are speaking, but still it's a selected group of people, let's say, and it's one discussion. There is not really this space for discussion that has a direct impact in the institution. And it's also important that we name the issues that we, others, everyone finds, not to, let's say, point out what we don't like only, but just to improve it. Like, it's normal that there is some tension. And for example, in the idea of how elitist or not is the institution, and you also, I mean, we also have to acknowledge that there is a discrepancy in the, for example, tuition fees that European students pay and non-European students pay. For example, that's Dutch law, so it's not something that we can change internally, but already if you position yourself and there is a space for this discussion within Delft, that could already help to acknowledge that there is this intersectionality of issues at place and think of strategies together of how can we deal with that.
Good point. Anybody else want to react on that? Or it's just...
I agree.
I agree, yes.
Maybe it's also because we do have some more slides to go through.
Yeah, we can go
and I think they also build up slowly. So the next one,
exactly.
the person...
Slowly like a tanker.
Maybe I would still like to react to the previous one.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah. It's very slow for the institutions to change. But also, maybe one thing that I want to get out of my chest is that there is also a kind of a disbelief in this kind of diversity talks in general, right? Because these are also the instruments of the institutions to say that everything is all right. And we have these voices here. So, yeah, we don't need to do more than this. And that's also something I want to ask you, our moderators, on the type of maybe policies you're working on, what kind of issues you have identified in the institution that needs to be improved on, or also maybe Roberto as well as the former officer.
No, but I have something to say about that. I think we were discussing this earlier. There is this institutional diversity, which is a bit boring, to be honest. But it's necessary. We need to force the institution into doing more, right? But there is also the diversity of understanding how knowledge is produced, by whom and for whom, especially by whom. And I think that's the next step that we need to take. So it's not, I think diversity is not, it is about identity and well-being, and we want to be happy here together, but it's also about what kind of, so it's about what you're saying. Yeah. What kind of architecture do we want to produce, and by whom is this architecture produced?
Well, I actually said this quote, so I think maybe I should say something, because I was thinking the like, change within institutions like. There's actually an emphasis there, like saying an institution like the Delft University of Technology is a particular institution, and a particular education, and I think that's what you're trying to emphasize as well. I come from Denmark, small schools, I mean, a lot of students, but another culture. And I think what we talked about before was that it would be extremely valuable to have a more value-based conversation about what the TU Delft actually is and would like to represent. So I will do a commercial for your book, Designing for Values, which is really great.
Thanks.
Great initiative. Where they're trying to set something out, but I've been teaching here for many, many years, like 20 years or something, on off. And you see things come, you see things go, you see teachers come, you see teachers go. Gender studies has been here in the 80s. I wasn't there then, but, so things comes and goes, but without history, I think we need some kind of history. Somebody writing the history of the TU Delft, of Bouwkunde. That would be extremely interesting to create some kind of awareness of what kind of, if it is an institution, what kind of institution is it? Is it one? Is it several? Are there several schools? Different people thinking, and to understand this kind of building of awareness and coming and going of awarenesses. That there has been a gender group here, like Vrouwenstudies, and they left in the 90s because there was another discourse, and then it's coming back again. So it's like that's also the human culture, and a part of the discussion of architecture and situating architecture within maybe also a philosophical discourse, But I think this thing about values is extremely important right now, and why we're sitting here, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's to come back to your remark, which is very valid. I think, what we are doing tonight is maybe to discover how to teach diversity, and it's a very multi-layered subject. So therefore, I think I'm really happy with we're having two positions from different perspectives. But it would be really nice to have some sort of starting points for us, maybe with your experience, so we can pick on and develop further. So I think you all have different experiences, and so if we can make it more concrete what you're doing in education right now, and we can evaluate it, and not letting stuff end over here tonight, but seeing it as ongoing conversation. And so yeah.
But could I then ask a question? Because if we want to combine these two slides, this idea of diversity.
Well, we have more slides, so we can. We don't want to stick to these slides and combine them. That's very. I don't know if that's working. It's a very weird Siamese twin, I think. Yes. Well,
I would want to add something, because you asked how to teach diversity.
Yeah,
that's a question that is almost like
it's big,
weird to grasp.
Yeah,
because it's how is the question how to teach diversity, or is the question how to teach openness, how to welcome diversity? Because you can't teach diversity, I think.
I agree.
Yeah. So I think, yes, it's about role models, it's about showing history, giving examples, but the only way to invite a route to a more inclusive architecture if we create a space where people feel opened enough and feel welcome and safe to start a feminist group, or to do those things, or to share their opinions.
No, I agree.
So
exactly. That's why I wanted to, in a way, say that to include this idea of diversity, we need to deinstitutionalize, in a way, the institution. To break down the hierarchies and invite people in and make people understand. I mean, students, you are the TU Delft. I mean, if you're students, I don't know, teachers, whatever.
If you want to participate in the dialogue, would be.
We're all TU Delft.
If you want to say something, oh wait! I don't know if the camera.
Yeah, from a perspective of a student, diversity becomes like an identity in a way. That's what Roberto just told us, and it is an identity. That's why I think not a lot of students relate to it. So I think diversity is indeed not really to You can't teach diversity, but you can change people's thinking about diversity. So that's it. It's about identity. That's just a thought.
Thanks.
Thank you. Some more thoughts from the tribune? No, that's okay.
If you have any urgent remarks in between, please raise your hands and I will accommodate you. I think the interesting thing is also to maybe acknowledge that within TU Delft, our faculty has also a somewhat special position. Now, if you compare that to the other engineering schools, we have a certain demographic, with much more people that have ADHD or are maybe queer or at least creative, neurodivergent, I don't know what, no? So we have a different kind of problem, but then we are also people that engage with this, no? Like with this for other people. And I think in that regard, Roberto, sorry, the word justice gives you away. The question about connecting the question about equity, inclusivity, and diversity with the question of justice is, of course, then also the way how it could possibly be integrated into education as a framework to create more just cities, more inclusive environments. No, so it's. I think maybe you can help explain that a little bit. In the one hand, you said also it's about first acknowledging and prioritizing voices of individuals who have been historically marginalized. In how far is that part of the justice question?
Well, I think that's one aspect of justice is to recognize the injustices of the past. As you said, I think we need to write the story of Baukunde and understand what are the directions that this institution is taking, the directions it took in the past, and what groups were marginalized in the past as well, so that we can. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't pay attention to. I'm looking at the gallery over there. There was a big row about that gallery that only contained white male European architects. And people rebelled against that because there is more to be known. It doesn't mean that we are going to give less attention to, I don't know, to Le Corbusier, or there's just enough space in our heads to know more, and to know more different things, and to prioritize the struggles of those who have been forgotten. And I'm talking about women. I mean, 50% of the population. It's ridiculous, right? I'm talking about the Global South. I'm talking about racial minorities, but also about different social classes that are not represented here.
No. I think it's very important, but you also bring up a lot. Do you want to... Eva?
Yeah, maybe it's about showing history, studying other stories that are ignored or overlooked in the curriculum at this point. But it's also about, I think, showing practical examples of spaces that did something positive and that were inclusive, because sometimes it's really hard to translate the ethos of a designer to the actual design. So what can we actually do with our spaces?
Exactly, and you have a nice example in which you dealt with it?
Yeah, maybe I can give an example. With FOOF. FOOF is a queer party, and I've been doing that, organizing it for about 7 years next to my studies in Delft. And we always hopped from venue to venue, and you might know these like rustic brown cafes in Delft, and we had to transform it into a queer night. So you can imagine it was a bit of a challenge, but it also provided us with a question like, how can spatial design and spatial decoration and interior design contribute to an appropriate experience? So that's why I tried to, after graduating, we tried to connect organizing events in nightlife to spatial design. So for Roodkapje, Stichting Roodkapje in Rotterdam, that's a cultural hub, and they also have a burger bar, and they do concerts, and they have artists in residence, so they do a lot of things. One of their main problems was that nobody felt invited to come in and experience the scala of things they were offering, even though their door is a wide open garage door, super open, and you would think, hey, people would enter, but nobody did. Even I didn't, and I was a regular there, like a resident there. So we started to try to figure out how to give the space an upgrade that it would become a more inviting and safer space. So that's where the 3 S's, spatial, social, safety, came from. One of the things that we found out is that it's very important for people that enter a space that might have experienced or are afraid that they will have an unsafe experience, that they have a moment to get ready for it, and they have a moment to trust the space that is to come. So creating transitional areas where you can get a hint of what is coming next by simply making a window in a wall. And then it doesn't have to give away everything. It can be a window above eyesight, but just simply showing from the space that visitors can trust it. That's an example.
It's a really nice, concrete, and also, yeah, because you're also professing humane architecture, which is, I mean, it's also not new, but maybe it has gotten lost. It's losing its value more and more, or in modern world society. So, yeah, okay. Do you want to?
No, I was just thinking that the quote also points at the decision-making process instead of only the design solution. You know, and I think that's really important in this quote, actually, and pointing at that you as a designer are kind of designing the process in a way and not the output, because it's a consequence of the collaboration, the dialogue, and with potential users or the site, I don't know. So there's like a paradigm shift, I think, going on in this slide somehow, you know, like shifting or pointing at the discussion of what is it that we design, you know, what is the object, what is the architectural object here, and what are we educating architects for? I mean, how do you see a role in that process in the field? You want to say something?
In urbanism, we call that solutionism, and we want to avoid that because if you give a solution for everything, how do you know if your solution is the best? Yeah. There should be a focus on the process as well. Yeah. How do we get to that solution? Who is designing the solution? And I think, of course, in an engineering, designy university, that's a difficult conversation to have. But I think we are getting there.
Yeah, so in a way it's going back to what you said. I mean, you can't teach diversity, but you cannot also give solutions necessarily. You can provide spaces that people can inhabit or can conquer in terms of decision making and stuff.
Yeah, like Eva said, if I may, let's cultivate this openness, right?
And have a position in the fact that I think design or architecture shouldn't be a definitive thing. Like when your design, it shouldn't be finished. It's a starter. It's not an end. So that's also a different way of designing. It doesn't have to be an all finished thing.
I think what is also interesting maybe to realize in that regard is I think we have made some steps in our education to teach that. No? So specifically in the architecture's masters, through the first positions course, throughout the research plan, we specifically tell you to not create a solution, but to define a problem, to define your problem that you're problematizing towards the end into a design. No? And I think in that regard, I think what is always maybe not mentioned enough is that when you highlight the process, you could be also aware that you also design your own education by the modules you choose, by the tutors you choose, by how much resistance you put against what is given to you, no? And that makes you also a different person in the end. You become a different person, you become a different type of designer by designing your own process. And I think that relates maybe to Eva's next point, that you said that at least when you studied here that your architectural education lacked practical guidance on how to implement inclusivity and diversity in design, and I saw that also back in a diversity of the case studies you were given. And I would like to ping the question first to Irene, let's say, in your experience in graduating here. Do you feel the same? Do you feel different about it?
Well, definitely there is a lack of diversity in what we learn, and there are marginalized voices, and I think that's really important to say. And I think what's even more important is that they are not only marginalized theoretically, so in the classroom, but also practically. And this is a bit hard to call out, but you do see different behaviors of teachers sometimes, depends on your gender, your background. And this happened in my former university in Berlin, but also here. And I mean, it's again not about pointing fingers, but this needs to be said, that probably this lack of discussion or not lack of references, but let's say the understanding of this education that we have here as universal also silences some voices, and that also will be reproduced if we don't give the space to do it otherwise. So I think for me it's not only about giving references, but like I do like this idea of writing the history, but also knowing how it relates to the present.
But then
because
it's maybe then not only about having a more diverse staff, but also about an atmosphere in which there's more open words also for the staff to be more true to their own education. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And yeah, we talk about the architectural values and the education here, how we can teach diversity. But yeah, I'm also thinking about the students who are receiving the education here, right? And yeah, there are, I think it was in some of the quotes there, but there are also very different tuition fees and different commitments made to be here. And not everyone is going through the same struggles with their residence permit and finances.
Definitely.
And some students are really burdened by all this pressure throughout their studies. And it's not easy. So thinking about diversity, I think there's much more to learn from these situations than teaching it. And maybe the solidarity feeling is something we need to create here. Like, does everybody feel in solidarity?
It's a good point. Really nice, yeah.
Does it mean, a question for all of us, to have a more personal approach in teaching?
I think so. I think maybe we give the impression to students, I'm talking as a teacher, sorry, but we give the impression to students that it's all very professional, but I think we need to be able to explore people's lives, personal stories, and struggles as well here. They are part of the learning.
And it might make it more fun for teachers too, because it's also fun to know each other's stories, to know each other's histories, to see each other's differences.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, please do.
Thanks for this talk. It's really interesting. On that point, which I think is very good, do you have any practical solutions on how that could be done? Because sometimes we've got students, I'm a teacher here too, and we've got students and you think, are they struggling? How do you approach them? So, I mean, just even to get guidelines, because there was a student and he was doing really badly with his essay, and then I was finding, and he's actually a refugee from Syria, and he comes to us from a camp and everything. So I kind of cut him a bit of slack, gave him an extra session. He managed to pass the essay. But I felt kind of, am I intruding in their private lives if I do that? So is there a way that you might suggest that we could do that sensitively?
I'm not sure, but if you would reverse the position, would you feel intruded in if someone would help or ask a more personal thing? Would you feel that?
That's actually a very good idea.
And you could also ask first. Do you mind if I?
Yeah, that's a really nice suggestion. I know if it was kind of my situation, I would see it as a genuinely good thing that was aiming to help, and it did help in the end. It's just, I'm afraid to do it with more students because I'm still afraid that it might.
So why shouldn't people be able to ask for help? If they need help.
Exactly, but so often they don't, and they kind of struggle in silence, and then you find out that it's not about what they're doing, it's kind of background to it. And
so we have to offer help before they ask it sometimes.
Yeah, but I think
that puts us in a vulnerable position maybe, but
yeah, that's what I felt. But I think I really like your suggestion. I will try that in future. Thank you, Eva. Yeah.
You're welcome. I hope it works.
Thank you also so much. I think it's also, we can even scale up the problem because of course it has something to do that Birgitte also addresses. It has something to do with the fact that the world has also changed and people are much more vulnerable right now. Now people face much more pressure in general, and I think it's also about acknowledging that in general. Now we can acknowledge that our staff is also overworked as much as our students feature so much pressure from finding housing to paying things to thinking that the world is going down and when am I doing this and so on. So of course the stakes are much higher, and I feel like it's on the one hand we can also negotiate together, and I think that's very important, that teaching has to address this vulnerability and that we help each other in this moment, because I think that creates actually these kind of sustainable relationships that we think about the human aspect or the togetherness and so on.
But thank you for so I think definitely this is something to put on my agenda to organize maybe a dinner around this subject, because I think it's also vulnerable for teachers. So what I'm doing, and you're also alone, you have your own group and you don't have a lot of time to connect with other teachers. So I'll definitely organize something around it. Yes, thank you.
I just wanted to quickly say from the student perspective.
Yeah, please.
Exactly this situation today. I did MSc studio in a studio that I really, really liked with the tutors that were amazing. But at some point, my brain functions in a weird way of being really overloaded sometimes, and then I have problems with focusing on a task. And that happened last semester. MSc2 is generally a really short studio, so there was not much time and not much buffer to work with it, right? And I'm doing now the graduation studio with the same tutors in the same studio because I enjoyed it anyway. And today, the first day, introduction day, and my tutor came to me and he was like, Anna, I actually want to talk with you about your last studio because there are some things that would be nice to address, and kind of maybe I know how you work now, so I have it in my mind, so I will help you out to guide you through, but please speak up when you feel overloaded in a moment, because sometimes it's just too late. And I just wanted to kind of point it out that there are situations at this university, not always, but I had this it was not easy conversation, of course, but it was important because now I feel way more comfortable within the studio. And I just wanted to point
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think we have a very big faculty and to have addressed. Yeah, please come down.
Hi, thank you. In response to that, I think what another solution or an approach could be also for teachers is what I experienced in one of the last courses I did, which was actually, I'm now a graduate student. It was the first time in all the education that I had here in other universities that at the beginning of the course, in their course manual, integrated something about diversity and their open approach. And that actually surprised me in a pleasant way, because it was in the 5-6 years that I'm studying now, the first time that it was acknowledged that it was okay to be from another ethnicity, to have another sexual orientation, to be neurodivergent, or all these aspects of what makes us different or what makes us special, that it is okay to be like that. So I think for teachers, it's about creating an open mindset, an open platform that everybody is accepted as they are. And I think that really contributes to the discussion or that you have later on, but also when students encounter problems, that they know, okay, I can approach this teacher and they will listen to me, they will help me and guide me to overcome my problems.
Wow, thank you. What studio was it? I mean, let's make a...
It was The Space of Words, which was a new studio by Angeliki Scioli and Pierre Jenne.
Yeah.
And I actually thanked them for, at the beginning, like, I was actually quite surprised and amazed that they did that for the first time, but it made me feel so welcome in the whole course, and also for everybody that was joining the course there.
Wow, it's really, I mean, it's so almost obvious, but very simple gesture, which can, so thank you. Well,
but it's really related to the personal approach that each educator has, because I know also other studios that where they would say something like this, it doesn't have meaning, it's not meant, so it has to be carried and shared throughout the studio, throughout the chair, to be able to make such a statement. But when they do, it's known that it's honest.
And you noticed also a change in education or the approach or the subjects?
Yeah, it was really a personal approach of the educator towards the teacher. And throughout all the teaching, of course, there's a hierarchy in teacher and student and the guidance along the way. But I think that you can actually make a difference as an educator to push yourself in certain positions to be able to understand the student and to step into their shoes, to approach them, like these examples. I know you're struggling with something. Can I help you? Or do something different to improve their own education.
And did it also show in the results that you have got more diverse projects? Or?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Because it's mostly what I experienced throughout my studies is that a lot of teachers try to implement their ideas into the heads of their students rather than asking for ideas and guiding those ideas towards what in a methodological way know it's best for the outcome. And there's a really big difference, I think, between sort of oppressing your ideas on a student based on what you think, and that's also, for example, what you see here in the exhibition of the Archipri. You can recognize the studio, and that's mostly because all the projects are really influenced by the group of teachers that is lecturing that graduation studio. Well, for example, I'm a graduate in the Explore Lab studio. Everybody does something different. Everybody has their own mentor team. And the projects, they have a really big range in whatever the outcome is.
Beautiful. Do you want to respond?
Yeah, I was also a student here, and I always felt as though in tutorings, sometimes it wasn't as much about being a team with the educator and sharing knowledge, but it was more that I felt I was being judged if I knew their knowledge, which felt like counterintuitive because we're supposed to be taught as students and explore. So I think yeah, that's also the way as teachers we're personal with students. We make students feel seen, and we're a team. We're experimenting together instead of I'm here and you're there, and that makes students feel more understood and feel more seen, and opens for a safer interaction, and therefore perhaps inclusive designs and diverse designs.
And do you also notice then that there is more a space for criticism towards each other, to be critical towards?
A second part of it is the pressure of competition, and that really is big amongst students. Is that because of the image being an architect has, or is that caused by the role and the attitude of teachers? It's all intertwined, but as students, we should also help each other, share and team up instead of compare and feel lesser or more.
I actually really agree with that, which is in a way also why I think, I mean, I understand facilitating the personal and giving space for it, but I also think it's, I wouldn't say a problem, but I mean, we should be careful not to, I mean, if there is a problem, it might also be a societal problem in a way, and not only a personal problem. You know, if you individualize a person's problem in a way, I don't think you see the bigger picture. So, and I think it's extremely important in the economy that we live in now to actually see the bigger picture in the personal, you know, to see the macro in the micro in a way, and to see the representation. I mean, we all are agents in somehow. We all represent something, you know, so you can have a difficult mind, or you can have a whatever kind of mind, or think of, I mean, it's these perspectives that should be included, you know, and exposed and explored and elaborated in education, you know, that we can step out of this factory-like type of idea of education as an industry, you know, where we produce students on a long road, and they should all comply to the same kind of standards or whatever that is, because architecture is about so much more, you know. So I think I would also warn against a too individualistic approach, in the sense of, you know, making a victim of yourself in a way, you know, instead of like turning it around and say, I am like this and I represent a group that are like this, if you know what I mean. And what does that mean for my interpretation of architecture? What kind of space is that? How do we operate then, or, you know, connect? There's somebody up there? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I think in this regard, that's why, I mean, I really like that Rens and Anna share a bit their experiences, because I think this shows also that if you are in, because before you also mentioned why does sometimes people not speak up about their issues, or also why are there only 2 submissions when you do an open call about diversity. And this really shows that by acknowledging that there is a space to discuss these things in the studio, either personalized or more in the syllabus, that shows that this is not an individualistic issue, but it's actually things that we all deal with in one way or the other. And we have to create awareness that that is completely normal, and that we have to speak about it, because only then we are going to actually be let's say a more fair institution. Also, we are going to create more, let's say, just or at eye level interpersonal relationships. So I think a lot of times it's about creating the space for this discussion, like truly and honestly, and also adapting it to the struggles that we overcome. But that's super important. So,
yeah.
I'd just like to bring it back a bit to his comment, and maybe it has to do with what you say about creating space or giving space for this to flourish. He mentioned Explore Lab. I also did an open brief studio for graduation. And I think that it's symptomatic that the most, let's say, diverse projects or that contemplate diversity or inclusivity appear in the open brief studios. And personally, when I was choosing a graduation studio, I did not find myself in any other. And I think it comes for different reasons. People have different, are looking for different things when they want to design a graduation studio. And I extend this. I think there should be a reflection. Roberto mentioned about knowledge production, who produces, for whom it is produced, by whom. And I think there is an offset within the faculty that is, let's say, history courses, theoretical courses, which prioritize one specific voice, speaking from one specific perspective. And then later on, you find design studios which go to contexts others than that, with voices which are very different, and that target a very specific situation, which is usually an emergency situation. And I think this puts diversity into a perspective of, let's say, analyzing the other situation according to your own. And I don't think this is what diversity is about. So teaching diversity is basically teaching how to empathize, or to position yourself as an architect, not as someone who knows what is best, but almost as conducting the creation of a narrative. And I think this is a reflection that maybe it's valid as a diversity team. I feel like there is still an offset in the curriculum.
Definitely, thank you. You're very much shaking, so you want to add something? You're
Shaking for. I agree with.
Yeah, you agree?
No, exactly. The part about empathy is really important. It's not having pity of anyone. It's really understanding that there are different ways of living in this world, right? And we are just. I am just one of them. But I want to know what yours is. And you can't design for the way I am. I want to design for the way you are, right? In Africa, they have this, Afua can tell us, Ubuntu, this philosophy, I am because you are. It's incredible. Because it puts the
You want to please add something to it? Yeah, please. Thanks.
So Ubuntu. It's I am because you are. And I think that really connects into my insights of today. Thank you very much for hosting today's discussion. I think it's very meaningful. For myself, I can speak for myself, that it's really nice to have discussions like this. I am a PhD student from a lot of places, actually. But I grew up in South Africa and Swaziland, or now called Eswatini. The reason why this is relevant is because I got a very huge culture shock when I came to the Netherlands. I know Ubuntu. I know when someone has dropped a paper, you pick up after them, and we are in a symbiosis of life, and we greet by saying sawubona. Sawubona is our greeting, which means I see you. So I am used to getting up in the morning and making eye contact with someone and saying I see you, and that is my culture. So Netherlands was very different for me because I felt like I was not seen. Over time, this is my 4th year, I actually have moved predominantly back to Southern Africa, but I think over time, I learned not to take it personally, because in the beginning I really struggled. I took it very personally that I felt I was not seen. I naturally then moved to race. Is this a race thing? And then I realized, okay, maybe this is a cultural thing. I'm very confused about it. But I will say a space that really assisted me was Delft Global and TU DASA, which I'm a board member of now, which is the TU African Students Association. Just being part of something. I think I needed to find my feet and be part of a group of like-minded people or like cultural people that understood my cultural background, so that I could then assimilate into what is Dutch culture. Then I was like, oh, okay, so I shouldn't take this personally, that kind of thing. I want to speak about confidence in identity. I feel the idea of diversity, for me, at its core, is about identity. So who do I see myself as? I also acknowledge that when you're in university, I'm also a lecturer in South Africa. I know the age group. When you're a certain age, you're still finding your identity, right? So yes, I'm a woman of color, but I'm also wanting to fit in with everyone else next to me, and they're not necessarily of color. So I'm talking about things that we have in common, and I don't necessarily want to stand out too much. I kind of want to fit in because I'm also trying to get things straight. So I think there's also something about age bracket that we need to be very kind of empathetic towards. But also just confidence in identity around, there's this conversation that's going on around, it's actually this lovely gentleman over here who mentioned his student, and the student coming and having issues and not voicing it out. I think it's important for us, and it's not important for us to know. You won't necessarily know it if you're Dutch, but in some cultures, it's in a South African culture, you don't really speak about your issues. It's not really okay to do that if you're actually used to someone asking you, is everything okay? That's where I come from, right? And I've learned over time, which is great, that, oh, actually I should, because of places like Delft Global, where I'm mixing with a very nice multiracial, multicultural, gender diversity. So there's this element of like, let's ask questions, let's have conversations. Oh, okay, this is how you do it in Netherlands. Okay, cool. So I think there's something about assimilating to culture, knowing that there are spaces for you to come forward, but you might not necessarily know it because in your culture, you might do it a different way. So I would really say the identity thing is really one of them. Where I know myself, I'm struggling with my identity every day. I love Roberta's notion of we are changing identities daily in a daily space. So I think let's all give ourselves a little bit of empathy towards just wanting to do this process well, but it's also very difficult to figure it out because we're all changing in our identities. But yeah, I really will circle back to the idea of groups. Groups that have like cultural groups, just so that you can start to, you can start to feel confident in your own identity. And now I know, I am an African student in TU Delft. I have so much to just while I'm here, can we get a chair from Africa on that top level? Just, can we put it on the minutes? I have something that I can actually add, and it's a beautiful, wonderful, I am an asset to TU Delft. And the thing is, I know that now because I've had these conversations and I've realized places like, I'm going to say Delft Global again because yes, they have pushed my confidence up. They've told me that I'm an asset. They've showed me how I'm an asset by asking me questions and getting me involved in conversations around what TU Delft is. So I think that's really important. But then I also will say, let's be careful in the cultural groups also, because sometimes the cultural groups can also be a pity party. Right? So I think this is where TU Delft can then come and have orientation conversations with these cultural groups, and then there's a real conversation there. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, great. I mean, please, I didn't even know there was this group, Global. I mean, I'm jealous. I want to get in. Yeah, I mean, wow, we can learn so much from you. It's really, you study us. It would be really nice to have some sort of connection. We'll speak. Thanks.
I want to thank you for putting the question of identity on the table. And I think also, as you said, it's a process. No, so if we think about that as a process, then we also talk about identification. No, so like, who do you identify as? Which also means what sort of person do you want to be? How do you relate to your social and natural environment? And I think that's so crucial to understanding who you are as a person, who you can be as a designer or whatever you want to be. No, like just a person you want to be. And of course, that's also something you learn here. No, and I think it's such a pity that cannot be addressed yet, maybe, as part of what the education is. No, to just become a practitioner of a certain type of worldview of how you relate to people, how you relate to objects and so on. And of course, if it's philosophically informed, if it is actually like what gives you, you would say, like, everybody constantly takes a critique on their drawing personal. How is that not already Ubuntu? No, so in some sense, you are already defined by how people react to what you do. And so I love that to think about our education as like really targeting on that level of individuality. And of course that makes it extremely vulnerable, but that could be connected. It doesn't work.
Sorry.
Education.
I want to go to the empowerment question. This one. No, so it is about, okay, I put you on the spot because you already mentioned that before. Birgitte said that it's education, and we could say an inclusive education empowers individuals to become agents of change. But you become first agents of your own change. No, it's like, I think we don't say that enough, that this is about you. You invest the time to become a certain type of person here, no? And that, I think, if you are aware of that, and that's why we always talk about awareness creation, I think that completely changes the dynamic of what you demand from your tutors, what you demand from your colleagues, and so on. So I think Yes, you have addressed that also in your interview, specifically under the aspect of decolonization, no? Because it changes completely the relationship between educators and the educated. I don't know, how do you look at that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was thinking of empowerment exactly when you were talking, and it's indeed, I mean, we've heard now some moments of this empowerment happening in some of the studios, and that's really vulnerable, important, valuable. And okay, now I need to pick up my thoughts again. But I think, yeah, it also comes with safe space, right? You said that there's like, do you feel judged or not? So how do we create these safe spaces as well? So it's not, if you're in that moment of not being confident in yourself, then you may need some extra encouragement to just speak up your mind. So, I mean, I think, yeah, this exhibition has worked very well. And the letters, I think the number of letters that was submitted doesn't mean that there's not enough interest in this. I think maybe we need to really try to reach out more and to have moments of anonymous interviews and to really ask. And maybe then, when those anonymous letters are there, people will hear that there are others also sharing the same things. And then there's the empowerment, perhaps.
You want to yeah.
Yeah, just something quickly maybe in regards to this, because I do think that there is a general interest in these topics actually, but not a lot of people are voicing them out, or at least when I took part in the interview and so on, I was approached by some people asking, oh, how is this organized? And it seemed to me that they were questioning how transparent the process is and so on. And I was actually happy that people were interested in it. But I think that shows that there is the interest. Maybe it's not connecting exactly to the offer or how it is being approached now, but this can be worked through. And I think keeping this in mind, how to work this through, is how we should continue. And there I would also address the topic of activism. Because I think actually activist activist groups, they actually do this quite well, and I think you can also do activism through teaching, which is what I think we all agree on. So I think this idea of creating awareness that there is a space to discuss these things one-to-one with the student, but also having these discussions maybe in a more horizontal level, or maybe having a space, or let's say a bank of letters that can always be sent. I'm just giving some ideas. But this, thinking of it as like an everyday activism, I think will be really creating a real space for words, but also for actions in the faculty.
Yeah, and giving the example, like you said, being the agent of change ourselves, to invite other agents of change, because the fight is sometimes intimidating and hard, and we need motivation and inspiration.
I want to go back to something that Birgit said before, that some of our personal struggles are actually collective struggles. And my dream is to inspire students and teachers and colleagues to really face the big struggles that we have collectively. And I think we could make this building much more fun.
Absolutely.
And much more, let's talk not only about climate change, let's talk about patriarchy and how it influences architecture. Let's talk. So my plea is to make this a much more fun space where people feel inspired to be activists. Because I think it's there. We just have to kind of
Absolutely. And so of course, it's not only about problems all the time. I think your story, it's really, it's really like we can do so much better. It can be so much more fun environment and rich, and not only about crisis and problems, which is, I think, basically the most beautiful part of this faculty, that we tackle problems in a creative way. So it can even,
it's a little bit different from what I said, because I think I think I'm really talking about the big challenges of society that are there, and they are problems. So I think we have to face them.
Definitely, but not only in a
not in a negative way.
But I also think, I think it's important not to forget education is a preparation, you can say, for the life after you graduated. And there is a profession out there, a discipline, an industry. And if we want change to happen, it's extremely important that you see yourself as preparing to become that agent of change. And that's where activism comes in. And of course, if we as educators can help while you being here, it's great. But the big struggle and battle is also outside, understanding that the industry in itself is not necessarily open for these other perspectives that you carry with you. So it's also about a continuation, and seeing the bigger picture, and that we're in a big flow right now. And there's a lot of criticism, actually, I think, right now from younger people in practice, and I follow those on, working hours, in decision making, in a lot of stuff like that. So it's to keep yourself oriented, and to continue these kind of, confronting things and understanding that it's not about you in that sense, or your personal problem. It's about change, and that we all represent a little aspect of that, but we can only change a culture, like the culture of our discipline, if we do this collectively,
And if we create opportunities together, because as someone who graduated, you're completely right. There's a lot of criticism in our line of work, and it has shifted from having quality of living as main focus to profits, being Instagrammable, all these things, which makes it feel for new architects like they're already one step behind. What are they fighting against? But if we try to create opportunities together, we don't have to follow the system that's already created for us. Start something else, start something new, start something warm, start something that comes back to why we need architecture. It's not just a luxury thing, we're actually living in it. So
I was wondering about you, Irene, because you have a very particular graduation proposition or whatever. What options do you see for an agent like you?
I have a lot of thoughts in my mind about this. Because I do think that, I did a very specific graduation topic about spaces for sex work, and that was quite hard at times. And I also, let's say, struggled while doing it, because I thought, while doing this, maybe I am going to go in this direction of I can only do research afterwards, because I already was sensing so much resistance within the university that I thought, if I apply to an office with this project, it's this, even though I did a very architectural intervention in the end, but it doesn't matter. People get stuck at the word sex and feminism. And I have to say that I did find a lot of support outside of Delft, which is a bit scary, but I went to the symposium in Berlin, which had different topics. And there I was really overwhelmed and happy to see how I could have a discussion at the same level. Whereas here, even though I did have a lot of support from some tutors, but with other people, it was like it wasn't a topic to be discussed because it doesn't have anything to do with architecture, even though it's all about safe spaces and, let's say, understanding struggles that happen in this country. So yeah, I don't know where I'm getting with this this short monologue, but yeah, I think and also I know where I was getting at. While doing it, I realized how privileged I was, because the position that you are in when you graduate, I mean, I think I can kind of choose where I want to work. It's not totally true, but I have an European passport, and also I have a family that supports me, whereas I realized that a lot of people actually cannot really choose in which architecture office they do, and maybe go for an architecture office that does more beautiful projects, because they just don't get, let's say, the European visa, or they don't get the pay that they need to support their families. So I think the architectural world is very precarious, and that's something that we have to address, and it's been addressed, but I am more in touch with it through maybe Instagram than in the classroom. And I think bringing these topics of the real world to the university will also be very important, to also empowering, but also addressing the reality that we all face in and outside the university.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I want to add that, yeah, the struggles we face here are also in the practice of architecture, and maybe they kind of affect each other somehow. And yeah, this is also a thing that if you don't have the right visa, many of the market is closed to you, or also to accept ourselves as architectural workers and to just say that, okay, we are workers and we should look out for our rights is important. There was an event last year by Stilos. I think they invited the Netherlands angry architects, anonymous architects, to kind of show or tell about the rights we have, or to talk about unionizing as architectural workers. And it's also really important to maybe have more in our education to inform the students on these things. So yeah, to add to patriarchy, I think maybe labor yeah.
relations. I think that that's a project. We're slowly running out of time, so maybe I would still want to open the floor to some questions from you. What we can also do is maybe bundle 2-3 questions, and then also if you have statements, they're also very welcome. If anybody wants to have a question, friends.
Thank you for the whole discussion. I had a question regarding you both as the diversity officers, which is leading into hierarchy and the hierarchy of this faculty, because I feel like what we have overall in society, in Northern European society or the Western society, is still the disbalance between male-female, but also ethnicity. And also here in this faculty, we have a dean, no offense, but he's a cis male, heteronormative, comes from a privileged background, and he has surrounded himself with the people from exactly the same backgrounds. So I feel like with change, we always encounter a lot of problems with trying to convince other people because they yet don't understand our problem. And I feel you are both really involved into the whole network of these changes of diversity, but I was wondering what you are encountering in this whole system of hierarchy, and if you have maybe solutions or ideas or something to share with the public, how we as individuals or people that don't have the power yet, maybe, how we can demand change in that.
Can I? Yep. Yeah, I think it's a slow process and also very personal. I think for me as a male, and I'm also a lesbian woman, and I think it's a slow process in which for years, I thought, oh, I just fit in and I do the thing because everybody is doing this heteronormative. I wasn't aware, you know, so, and I think the more aware I get, the more confident I am, and maybe also heading for positions, or I think that's also very important. It's also coming from the people themselves to because, you know, also to get more diverse staff. It's to be honest, I'm also a coordinator of a big project. It's really hard to get a diverse staff because, you know, it's more women and more teachers from different cultures. They still, or I'm not looking well enough, but it's hard to find. So it's also, I think, a two-way process, and also for the management maybe to get more aware, but also for me to be more aware, and for other people from within the diversity corner, which is a field, I think, but yeah. So that's my personal opinion.
I think maybe next time this panel could also be more diverse.
Definitely.
We actually took that as a, let's say, conscious decision and so on, and I think that also relates to what Rens is addressing, because one of the problems that you also see in institutions is that they then suddenly, when they start to do diversity work, that they do the wrong steps. So they make diversity hires, the people are suddenly tokenized, and then all the photos are suddenly multicultural, and we pretend everything. And you know, it's in a sense, it's just like a form of greenwashing on a cultural level. And we just acknowledge we're not there yet. No, so we have a program running to hire a person, a guest professor, in connection to EDI-related things for like 2 years. It was very difficult to actually find candidates because then there's suddenly legal questions with visas and so on. What you can't even imagine that. That's not an excuse. It just means, in some sense, that we need to address these things on a level of reality. And, for example, what you say about, to generalize what you said, homophily is a very simple cultural mechanism where people tend to surround themselves with what is familiar to you, and like to a very normal level. So it's not even an institutional problem, it's a societal problem. And, you know, to the point that we can't even do something about it. What we do is we do something that is maybe somewhere still bottom up or so. We try to suggest something that is then being discussed in these forums. We have to do a lot of convincing to do. We have a lot of, we have to make claims, but we also have to suggest certain things. No, it's not just I can suggest something and people just say yes or no, but there's so many different levels of what are the effects. Is this maybe the best way? Is this the best way to attract diverse students? What does that mean if there's not enough diverse teachers? We can hire diverse teachers, but do we have all our exclusionary mechanisms dismantled to keep them here? Apparently not. So it doesn't make sense to hire them before we first put effort into making this space actually more inclusive, so that the people that we then finally attract stay here. And then can do what they would like to do, and then don't suddenly have to teach a bachelor course in Dutch or so, because that's the given structure or so. So like what we can do only is actually rendering the hierarchy more transparent to itself, to make it debatable, and also with you. And in the moment that it suddenly becomes visible, we can discuss it. We can together take all our visionary power into picturing how it could be otherwise. And then the best thing that I promise you, really the only way to go about it is do something. Do it yourself. You have to be the first person. If then suddenly 1,000 people do something, it will gain traction. People will suddenly adapt to it, will see, oh, it's relevant to you. Oh, I never heard that this was relevant to you. If it's important to you, then let's do it. So all these things will happen, but unfortunately they really require our collective interaction, and we in some sense can only be the mediators. Whenever you have ideas of those kind of things, when you want to do something, you want to scale it up, please contact us. We're always happy to do that. In the same sense, it's not just us. We also wanted to highlight there is actually a lot of people working here, longer, shorter, that like to do all these kind of things, so that you also know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think coming into the bottom-up approach, especially for now, it's quite a formal setting here. But if you see at the audience, I know there's a lot of talk around the faculty, within groups of students, within lecturers about these topics. But being here on camera, you know,
is not a safe space.
No, exactly. I think it's really good saying, I really have to say that we have these topics now discussed on such panels that also are represented outside of the faculty. But I think there's something really valuable in the bottom-up approach, but then a bottom-up.
I think it's the combination, and I think we're also trying to do it bottom up and on small scale and bigger scale, and well, organizing dinners and to talk together, and also to evaluate it and to bring it maybe into policy. So it's an ongoing process on different levels, and hopefully we can create some safe spaces in which it's possible all the time. Yeah, and I think we have to wrap it up.
Might I add one thing? Because we're talking about policies and processes, but we're architects. We can also change space. So we can also look at our faculty, and will our faculty afford for these conversations and afford for these spaces? Let's create more intimate spaces where students can talk.
That's what I'm going to. I think we have. Sorry, that's also I'm really trying to deal with, and you'll see. We'll talk about it. But I think we have to wrap it up, Javier. Or
we will create a safe space by switching off the cameras, and then we invite you for informal discussions here after. Thank you so much for our guests today. So maybe help me give a round of applause.
And thank you, the audience, because that's also, I think it was not so formal. You were great.
Thank you very much, Cecilia and Robert, and thank you very much to all the panelists. Indeed, Cecilia and Robert asked me, I think it was last week on a phone call, what is it that I wanted to achieve with these BK talks? My answer was, I really hope that students for whom we do this engage in the conversation. So I think we can say we have succeeded. The conversation needs to go on, evidently. There are things that you just raised or other people have just raised that need to go on. But let's call it a mid-review, okay? Thank you very much again, and see you very soon in another BK talks related to this. We need to keep talking. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bring Ai Weiwei to talk about diversity. Then everybody will be here.